Hello there, my name is Victor Oguyinka, and you're welcome to the midweek edition of Today in the News, and of course all of those newspapers across the Federation, and looking at the major headlines everywhere.
Over 1,000 people are benefiting from free medical services provided by the FCT chapter.
Interested in this news. Arsenal's first club transfer record signed Pep.
Hello and welcome to another brand new day, and this is Today in the News, where we talk about newspaper review and also analyze what's happening on the top front pages of the newspaper. My name is Precious Chukudi and I have my co-host with me,
Damilola Bushake.
Dami, how are you?
I'm fine.
Hope you were not stressed yesterday.
I was.
Alright, without further much ado, we're going straight into today's dailies, and I'll be starting with Vanguard. And on the front page of Vanguard newspaper, major headlines, we have our central security system has failed. Senate President says urgent restructuring of security architecture required. Rejig stop hierarchy of security agency, PANDEV. And this is from SGF saying why is federal government pushing for community policing. You can find that story on page 5, and also on Vanguard newspaper you can find page 7, mother, wife of ex-PDP chairman's son Miriam sentenced to death by hanging. And also on page 11 of Vanguard you can find Amotekun, Southwest has no plan to secede from Nigeria, said by Fayemi. And on Vanguard newspaper you can also find tension as gunmen kills 15 in Plateau villages. That story can be found on page 6. And also one that is so dearest to our hearts is page 10. Lagos State government goes tough, bans Okada, tricycle in 15 local government areas. You can see that story also. You can see the list of those places on page 41. And lastly, on Vanguard newspaper, RMAFC begins review of salaries of political office holders. You can find that story also on page 9. And from Vanguard we move to the Punch.
And on the front page of the Punch, outrage as RMAFC says politicians' pay may go up. And the rider, cut politicians' pay. NECA tells commission it's anti-masses illegal, says Serap. It's wicked, unacceptable. This is coming from CDNDC. Move disappointing, declares Siyaga. And other stories on the Punch. Court sentences Miriam Sanda to death for killing husband. Details can be found on page 11. And on page 6, Lagos bans Okada, Marwa in Ikeja, Surulere, 13 local governments. And still on the Punch, on page 19, Bello inaugurated as Kogi governor for second term. And on the stories above the nameplates, on page 17, those against Amotekun are agents of criminals. This is coming from Gani Adams. And lastly, on the front page of the Punch, community policing, confusion in commands over IG's directive. This is on page 2 of the Punch. And from there, we'll go straight to This Day.
And on This Day newspaper, we have major headlines. Nigeria security system not working efficiently, says Senate President. You can find that story on page 8. Also, Oyo local government crisis escalates. That story also can be found on page 8. And on the stories above, we have again Buhari condemns violence as gunmen kills 14 in Plateau. That story can be found on page 5. And also we have a CBN pumps $9.98 billion into forex market in Q4. That story can also be found on page 8. And from This Day newspaper we go to The Nation.
And on the front page of The Nation newspaper, Senate, security systems can tackle terrorism and killings. And the rider, Lawan 6 rigid of structure, 15 killed in Plateau, and Governor, I was shot at. In other stories, Akeredolu, Oyetola, Fayemi defend Operation Amotekun. No religious bias, says Osun Governor. Ondo Governor, recruitment soon. Details can be found on page 7 of the Nation newspaper. And all the stories above the nameplates. More states confirm spread of Lassa fever. Confusion in Oyo as SAC chairman returned. The rider, guns boom in local government. These can be found on page 42 of the Nation newspaper. And lastly, on the front page of the Nation, Lagos bans Okada tricycles in 15 councils. Government plans other means. This can be found on page 6 of the Nation. And from there, we go straight to the Daily Trust.
And on the Daily Trust, we have major headlines. Nigerians want package courts for public officers. That story is on page 6. And they also have this infographics showing senators and house members running courts as well as ministers on the front page of Daily Trust. And at the bottom of Daily Trust, we have our security system has failed, Lawan. You can find that story on page 3. And on page 45, we have fears in states as Lassa fever bites harder. And lastly, on the Daily Trust, we have concerns over National Assembly budget. Details as lawmakers resume today. That story can be found on page 43. And that's all we have on newspaper review. We're going to go into the newspaper analysis segment where we're going to also show you our guest in the studio. He's here to discuss more of this front pages topic. And we're going on a quick break. When we come back, we'll discuss further on these front pages.
I hereby sentence Mariam Sanda to death by hanging until she dies. This I have done, believing that
yes. Ah, fuck off. You can't shut up.
I hereby sentence Mariam Sanda to death by hanging until she dies. This I have done, believing that
Okay, welcome back. If you're just joining us, this is Today in the News. Here we read and analyze the top stories on newspapers across Nigeria. And this is the second segment. The first time we read the front pages of the dailies. And now we are going to the analysis. And today we have a guest with us in the studio. We have Mr. Dayo Akintobi, the publisher of Ilupeju Today. With us in the studio is here to analyze some of the major stories on the front page of the newspaper. You're welcome, sir.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. And okay, without much ado, we'll go with the first topic, and that's Senate President Lawan yesterday dismissed the country's security architecture as ineffective. And when you saw this, what was your reaction?
Well, he's spot on. I mean, we've had so many killings and banditry and kidnappings, and the current architecture seems incapable of arresting this scourge. So definitely we need to rejig this thing and look at other ways of making people in the country more secure.
But do you think it's only the security architecture that should be looked into, or the whole system? The whole system should be also looked at?
Well, this is a security issue, and the law enforcement agencies, the paramilitary, the security forces, they're the first point of contact. So that's what we first need to look at, is that those who are charged with the responsibility of keeping the country safe and secure, what are the shortcomings that are leading to this rampant outpouring of violence across the country? And this violence knows nobody by color, by ethnicity, by tribe. It's spread all across the country, and we seem incapable of arresting it. So the Senate President is absolutely correct when he says, let's take a look at the security setup and see how we can adjust it to be more effective.
But there's been a lot of reactions due to this statement that is it not too late? Because looking at it, that we've been facing some of the security problems for a long time. Is it now that they're just knowing that they want to start the restructuring of the security system?
It's never too late to restructure. It's an admission. The solution to a problem starts with an admission of the fact that there's a problem. So all along, if we've been turning a blind eye to the fact that we have deficiencies, structural deficiencies.
So they didn't accept it before, there was no acceptance.
If they accepted before, they would have started doing something about it. But now they've admitted, and this is coming from the highest echelons of the government, which is why I'm impressed. For a government top official to admit a shortcoming, it's a very big deal.
Okay, so I would like to ask, what are the major reasons for insecurity in the country? Like, if he's just coming out now to say we have large forms of insecurity, does it mean that we've not had insecurities in the past and they didn't notice it on time, or what? What are the major reasons for the rise of insecurity in the country?
We've always had insecurity. I mean, as far back as the Civil War in the 60s, there's always been insecurity, but in recent times, it's getting out of hand. Every day you have killings, bombings, kidnappings, and despite the police's efforts, they seem overwhelmed. So what we're saying now is it has risen to a level that is unacceptable to the public. Now let's remember that the Senate President is not an administrator, he's a legislator. So in this view, he's also one of us, of the people who's looking at it and saying this is not acceptable. But because he's in a position of authority, the fact that he is saying that gives it a lot more strength, gives it a lot more clout. But having said that, the executive, which is in charge of security and administration of the country, it's sounding a warning to them that you need to look at this better and shine a light on some of the areas where we can re-strengthen this.
Okay, so the government is talking about also joining community policing, into this. And the Southwest State also decided to help the government by forming Operation Amotekun. So do you think that this community policing would really help us to tackle some of these insecurities we're having?
Well, if you look at it from the standpoint of the fact that we've had a national policing architecture and it is failing or it has failed. So we say, let's look at other things. Some aspects of society are saying, let's do a regional security force. Some are saying, let's do a state security force. Like, for example, Lagos State, a couple of years ago, enacted this LNSC, which is a vigilante type of militia, and it's been very successful in Lagos State. So you've now got states doing it, you've got regions doing it, you've got CDAs that have their own little patrol vigilante groups. So we're saying, let us decentralize it, because centralization at the national level is not working.
Okay, so away from that, we're moving straight into the Lagos State ghost stuff on enforcement of Okada, tricycles and unrestricted routes, and they're saying this is going to start on February 1st. Now, we've been hearing about this since last week, and people were speculating, is it true, is it not true, will they be able to do that, considering the fact that it's going to affect a lot of people? What do you think about that?
The Lagos State government had initially passed this law back in Fashola's day. Let's not forget. This is not new. Okay. Initially, when they passed it, I think sometime 2011, somewhere thereabouts, they made a half-hearted effort at enforcing, and then they relaxed when they saw that there was a lot of inconvenience to the public. So I think they stepped back to look at it holistically and see, okay, Okada and tricycles have proven to be a menace, and they need to be dealt with. But government has to have a human face. Government policies have to have a human face. So you look at how they affect the people. So they step back a bit, and I think they've now come back after looking at it and said, okay, we've got to go back to our original plan. They never stepped away from the original plan of banning them. They just wanted to ameliorate the effect to the everyday.
Okay, thank you, sir. We're going to call one of our correspondents who covered the event of this Lagos State Okada ban, and he's going to be giving us more information on that aspect. So we're going to be calling Olasunkanmi, and we'll ask him some few questions on this whole Okada ban. Hello, good morning, Olasunkanmi.
Good morning.
Yes, this is in respect of the event you attended yesterday for the Okada ban. So I would like to ask you, what did the Lagos State government, why did they decide to ban Okadas and tricycles?
Okay, thank you very much. Before now, there have been issues or debate over the banning of Okada in Lagos, and it has been giving the state government a lot of concern. So yesterday, the governor directed the commissioners to address the media on the decision made by the Executive Council. And at the press briefing, the commissioners announced, addressed by Commissioner for Information and Strategy, Mr. Omotosho, and Attorney General of the state, that's Mr. Moyosole Onibanjo, and the Commissioner for Transportation, Mr. Frederick Oladende. At the briefing, we were made to understand that the ban became necessary following rising cases of Okada menace, robbing and maiming of residents. And he gave us some statistics that since 2016 to 2019, there were cases of over 1,000 recorded cases of Okada accidents in general hospitals, and out of this number, about 600 deaths were recorded, excluding those recorded by private hospitals. So the commissioner described it as scary, and in order to protect the lives and the property of citizens, the government had to take the hard decision on Okada. That is one. And secondly, there have been cases of robbing of residents at gunpoint by these Okada riders. They have flagrant disregard to traffic law of transportation sector 2018.
Okay, I would like to ask you, what are the reactions of some of these Okada riders? Did you ask them questions on what they think about this ban?
Yes. We'll ask the commissioners, have they been taken into consideration? Have they been engaged before now? And he made us understand that he called the leadership of these riders, that they've intimidated them. They've intimidated them with the son of the state government, and they have been carried along, and they expressed their support for the measure taken. So it required them to cascade it down to their members for them to key into it and be prepared for the enforcement by February 1st, when government is launching the full enforcement.
Okay. What do they expect the layman who takes a bike from his remote place to, get to the town before he can eventually go to work to do? Because are they creating another form of transportation? Because we already have traffic issues that we have to deal with in the states.
Yes, exactly the question we asked them, and they said all that has been put into consideration before now, that the state government has put that into their plans by rolling out some buses, that they've acquired the number of buses that they will be rolling out on those identified routes where the activities of these Okada people will be banned, that they'll be rolling them in phases, that they have it, that the regulations should be rest assured. And just be patient, because in the long run, the positive effect of the ban will be felt by everyone. That they should just be patient with them.
Okay, thank you very much, Olasunkanmi. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, sir. He's been talking about this whole Okada ban and everything, and that the government has looked at it from different angles. That this bike, they've been responsible for a lot of accidents of late, and also there've been reports of people who have had their bags snatched, and all those things happening to them, and that's the reason why they decided, it's because of securing of lives and properties. That's why the Lagos State government decided to ban this bike. What do you think about this?
Well, I don't think I think you shouldn't ban without an alternative already in place.
He said they created more buses.
Well, he said they were going to. He said they plan to. And even if they've created them, we haven't seen them, because the buses we see now, they're too long for the inner city roads.
Sure.
They ply the major highways. So there needs to be, I know some communities are starting shuttle services that with these small little mini buses that can ply the inner streets of communities. But by and large, you need to have put in a viable alternative and let it already have been test run and be running before you put in a full ban. I'm supportive of a ban because I know the Okada menace has gotten out of hand. But I also think we need to look at the convenience aspect for our constituents and make sure that they're not inconvenienced by the ban. Okay,
considering the fact that we were faced with a lot of traffic in this part in Lagos, like, don't you think it's going to really be huge? Because I know of people who have to, go from maybe Ikorodu to the island, and and even this private bike services are also affected. That's OPA, Okada. They can't take those ones again. Don't you think that it's going to really be serious for people who have to go all that far to the island, and they take bikes, and it makes their journey really fast for them?
That's the part that I'm a bit confused about, because the original law, when it was written, it permitted bikes above a certain size, I think 125 cc's. It permitted them on the major highways, which was the incentive for investors to start ride-hailing services like Okada, like OPay, like Max and G, based on that loophole in the law that permitted bigger size bikes. And those type of services have proven to be very efficient. The drivers and the riders are trained, they have safety procedures, they give helmets to the... So I think probably that should have been the exception, was to say, okay, this category of bikes are safer, they are registered, we know who they are. So if a bag is snatched off a bike, you can identify who the rider was, you can trace them back. So I think an exception should have been made for the higher grade of commercial motorcycling.
Okay. Moving on from that story, the story about the Revenue Mobilization, Allocation and Fiscal Commission chairman, who said yesterday that currently that they are reviewing the remuneration of the politicians' pay, and that there might be an increase in it. And considering that Nigeria now is considered as one of the lowest middle class income in the world, and the federal government are still looking at the new minimum wage that they're still deciding that they might not be able to pay, should there be an increase? Should the increase actually be what they're talking about now?
The operative word in your sentence, might. On the front cover of the newspaper, it says may. Review is simply looking at something. We've not concluded we're going to do this. They're flying a kite to see what the public reaction
But there's been a lot of outrage saying, is this what they're supposed to be discussing now? Because we've been talking about it, like the minimum wage, they've not been able to meet up. Most of them have not agreed that they can pay it and they cannot pay. But are they supposed to be reviewing it? Say, okay, might. Is the center supposed to come?
The minimum wage was reviewed. Everything is subject to review over time. So we review the minimum wage, we review salaries all the time, we review emoluments. Yes, let's review it. That does not mean it will be implemented. It is reviewed, it's kept on the front burner because, okay, maybe it's been so many years since they've had a pay raise, maybe cost of inflation has affected their expenses, who knows? But a review is simply a review. Let us wait until such a time as they say they're going to do it, then we'll complain.
Okay, so we're going on a short break, and when we come back, we'll still continue to talk to Mr. Dayo Akintobi, Ilupeju Today. That's publisher of Ilupeju Today. We'll be right back.
I hereby sentence Mariam Sanda to death by hanging until she dies. This I have done, believing that
All right, you're welcome back on Today in the News, and we're still talking to Dayo Akintobi, publisher of Ilupeju Today, and we're going to take some few comments on our social media page of people who have been commenting while the show has been going on. And this is from Benga Noah Ojewoye. He says we have a system that is working for the good of people in power alone. Democracy for the benefit of the few people in power. And then he's also saying, so this is from also Clement Ayola. He says the major reason is the greediness of our politicians for power. They empower these hoodlums and groups with arms and later lose control over them. So the results are what we are having now. I think he's responding to the security issues that, okay, fine, we were complaining about security here in the country, but this same government power are the ones that will tell us we're having security issues, so let's create an outfit, you know, and later once they feel like they cannot control that outfit, they're like, okay, we need to do another measure, you know, place another measure for things like this. What do you think about what he said?
Well, I think to some extent there's some credibility to what he's asserting. Okay. But in the run-up to elections, a lot of politicians arm their thugs to spread violence, to spread intimidation. And what happens is after the elections are over, these people are out of a job and they have weapons. Now, I don't necessarily think that the politicians intentionally set out to wreak havoc in society. I don't think so. I think we're a bit more above board than we give people credit for in this country. I think people have a good intent. I think those we elect to lead us really inherently want the best for the country. I don't think they would sow seeds of discourse intentionally by arming people and giving them the wherewithal to go out and harm people.
Okay. And moving on from that story, we're going to the visa ban. There's been the news making rounds that the visa ban, that the US is going to put Nigeria in the list. But Lai Mohammed actually came out, so we're waiting for the commission. He came out and he said that the Nigeria, that they're still reviewing it, and the news is speculating. But if this comes true, and if this is actually true, that they are actually looking at ways to stop this, and they will sit down with the United States government and think about this. So what do you actually think they should prepare for this? Because a lot of Nigerians are actually interested in this matter.
I'm glad you emphasized the if. Yes, because a lot of us are too quick to jump headlong to conclusions based on speculation. At the moment, the US has simply said it is reviewing possible visa bans for certain countries. They've not mentioned any country. They've not said. But because Nigeria is one of the countries that has large numbers of visitors and immigrants to the United States, it becomes natural to assume that Nigeria is one of them.
I think why they're assuming is because they said, you know, the President Trump said for the safety of these people, for the safety of the United Kingdom. But now in Nigeria, we have the issue of terrorism going on daily. So that is why this is a speculation that Nigeria might be in the ban.
No, because no, not at all. Because in that case, there'd be a travel advisory to U.S. citizens against coming to Nigeria. Nigeria's terrorism is homegrown. It occurs here. We don't export it. So if it is from a security standpoint, then Nigeria shouldn't be on the list because we don't export our terrorism. It's homegrown. It's local. Now, what the U.S. has done is issued travel advisory to its citizens regarding their presence in Nigeria, not vice versa. The issue of security challenges in the United States are more towards countries like the Middle East that export their own brand of terrorism. If you look at countries like Iran, countries like Afghanistan, where America has been engaged, countries like Syria, those countries are known to export terrorism. So if it's from a security standpoint, Nigeria is not concerned.
But if this is actually going to be true, like the name is going, do you think the government should prepare for this and the steps they can take to stop this?
Well, in diplomatic arrangements, there's always retaliation. Well, there's always responses. So if you recall my ambassador, I recall your ambassador. If you ban my people from visas, or you increase visa fees, I increase visa fees. So I would imagine that America has a vested interest in Nigeria. They have a lot of business relationships, they have a lot of investments in Nigeria. So if all of a sudden they say they want to restrict our people from going to America, I think it would be diplomatically appropriate for us also to have a countermeasure that restricts.
But it's going to affect our economy.
Without a doubt, there's always a sacrifice to be made.
So we shouldn't look at that side when we are talking about this.
No, we should. We should balance the gains, the pros and the cons. Should always be looked at and balanced. But by and large, if they place Nigeria on restricted visa, what we should do is find out the reasons why. What are the things they are afraid of us doing that are making them say, let's restrict your coming into our country? Okay. So let's look at those things and then try to address those issues.
All right, away from visa ban, we're going to Vanguard Sports, and we have 9 victims of Kobe Bryant's helicopter crash revealed. There are pictures of the victims showing at the back of Vanguard News Sports newspaper. And also we have NBA stars write Kobe Bryant's name on their sneakers. Kobe Bryant, Mercy, Ronaldo, Neymar pays tribute. What do you think about Kobe Bryant and his passing? It's really been a strong shaking for the NBA club.
Yes, it's quite tragic really, and part of the reason I think the outpouring of grief is so profound is because of the way and manner that it happened. It was a really horrific way to die, and then it was with his young daughter, and there were 2 or 3 other families involved, and there's a video circulating that shows the helicopter in distress and actually going down. So that galvanizes human emotion. It brings out empathy and sympathy, because what I see is people who didn't even know him. There are people here in Nigeria who knew nothing about him.
Okay, speaking about people who don't know him, currently in Nigeria on social media, the celebrities are actually arguing about it, and even the citizens are arguing that they don't know, most of them don't know Kobe Bryant, but they are paying tribute to him. That should this be so that if it was a Nigerian, this wouldn't have happened?
Well, we have a way of not really honoring our own local legends, our national heroes, of not recognizing them in the way. Take for example, what is this madness about Premier League football in the United States and the United Kingdom, and yet we pay scant attention to our own league here? I don't know if it is vestiges of colonial mentality. I don't know if it is a thing where we favor all foreign things to our own, but I think Kobe's situation is particularly more empathetic because of the way it happened. I think that would touch the heart of anybody anywhere in the world.
Okay, so we also have Hisu's Swan City penalty duty. Benitez in line for Newcastle return, and also Nadal beats Kyrgios and zooms into quarter-finals. And that's all we have for you on Vanguard Sports. We'll move, and remember that you can always follow us on all our social media platforms showing across your screen. You can like, share, and subscribe, and also visit us on our website www.vanguardngl.com. And this is where we close the curtains for today. I am Chukudi Precious, and my co-host
Damilola.
Yes, and thank you so much, Mr. Dayo Akintobi, for coming on the show. Thank you for all your commentaries. It was really nice having you.
Thank you.
Yes, so thank you very much, and it's bye from here.
And bye from me also.
Hello there, my name is Victor Ogunyika, and you're welcome to the midweek edition of Today in the News, and of course all of those newspapers across the Federation, and looking at the major headlines everywhere.
Over 1,000 people are benefiting from free medical services provided by the FCT chapter.
Arsenal Smash Club transfer record signed Pep.
I hereby sentence Mariam Sanda to death by hanging until she dies. This I have done, believing that